Hello friends, you should have already looked at the pre-guide sheet that I put on the Google Classroom for our reading lesson. We are talking about character and setting. And you remember the characters are the people that are in our stories. They can be people, they can be animals. And our setting is where it takes place, where our story takes place. So the story that we're going to look at today is called A Camping Spree with Mr. McGee, okay? And I want you to think about, as I'm reading, who our characters are, what new characters may come into the story, and what the setting is. What the setting is, where the story takes place, okay? This is one of my favorite books. Now, I'll read the page, and then I'll put the book up for you to see the picture. Early one morning at 7:03, Mr. McGee and his little dog Dee packed up the camper and hitched up the load, hopped in the Rambler, and then hit the road. They drove to the mountains, far from the sea, for 2 nights of camping, or possibly 3. Okay, see, they're packing up everything that they need to go camping in the back of the camper. There's nothing like camping, said Mr. McGee. I know you will love it. Just you wait and see. The views are fantastic. There's hardly a sound. Aside from the wildlife, there's no one around. And the air is so sweet, you'll sleep like a dog, said Mr. McGee and his small spotted dog. Okay, you see his ears? Why are his ears swaying back like that? Huh? Think about that. What does that tell you about their ride? A few hours later, they took a sharp right and found a great spot to lay camp for the night. It was high on a hill with a beautiful view of Mount Adams, Mount Lincoln, and Jefferson too. But perhaps the most wonderful feature of all was the brook that ran over a steep waterfall. Dee gathered pine cones and branches and logs. McGee made a campfire and cooked some hot dogs. And as the sun set behind far distant knolls, they sat roasting marshmallows over the coals. Now, it says that Dee was looking for pine cones and branches and logs. What do you think he wanted those for? Think about that. As the embers went out, they felt tired and dozy. So they climbed in their bunk beds, all comfy and cozy. But while they were falling asleep without care, along came a stumbling, bumbling bear. A kindly old bear whose sight wasn't so clear. He couldn't see far, and he could not see near. But he could smell marshmallows, sticky and sweet. This smell made him hungry. He wanted a treat. You see him sneaking up like that? Sneaking up behind the camper? Why do you think, you notice in this picture, they left out their marshmallows and their sticks. Why do you think they did that? Why do you think Mr. McGee and Dee left them out there? He sniffed out the place where the marshmallows lay, but the car and the camper were in the bear's way. Yet that didn't stop his sneaky old snitch. He simply tried squeezing right under the hitch, and as he was shimmying into the gap, he pushed up the hitch, which let go with a snap. Now, what do you think's going to happen? He's done unhitched the trailer to the car. What do you think might happen now? Think about that. Now that the camper and car were untied, they started to roll down the rocky hillside. The car bounced away on the old logging road, while the camper was heading to where the stream flowed. It flowed down the hill in a wild, bumpy ride, with Dee and McGee sleeping soundly inside. Do you think you would have woken up if that had happened to you, if you were in that camper? They were snoring and snoozing, enjoying a dream, when splash went the camper right into the stream. My goodness, that is a catastrophe. The splash shook the camper. They bumped out of bed. Now what in the world was that? McGee said. And when he looked out and saw where they were, his hair stood on end, and so did Dee's fur. They were caught in the rapids, but that wasn't all. They were headed smack dab for the big waterfall. Dee and McGee both started to quiver. As faster and faster they headed downriver. But just when they thought they'd fall over the edge, not looking good for them, is it? Not looking good. Let's hope something happens that can save them. Their camper got stuck on a rock at the ledge. So there they were, stranded, McGee and his pup, on the top of a waterfall 50 feet up. My, that's high. Would you be scared if you were hanging out that camper at the top of that waterfall? I know I would be. Meanwhile, that nearsighted bear from before was searching for one little marshmallow more, when lo and behold, and as if out of a dream, he spied something sweet floating over the stream. But what the bear thought was a marshmallow treat was really the hitch and not something to eat. So think about this right now. Stop for a minute, and I want you to make a prediction in your mind. What do you think might happen next? They're at the waterfall. They're about to go over. The bear thinks this is a marshmallow. What do you think might happen? The bear was determined to capture his prize, so he jumped in the water right up to his thighs. He splashed through the stream to the edge of the fall and snatched up the trailer hitch, camper and all. Dee felt a tug. McGee heard a knock as the bear pulled the camper right off of the rock. He dragged them both all the way up to the bank when he realized the hitch was not sweet, but quite rank. He spit out the hitch and left in dismay, while McGee and Dee's camper again rolled away. It flew down the path with a jolt and a jar. So there they go. They've been saved from the waterfall, but now they're rolling down again. And stopped in some bushes right next to the car. Dee popped her head out. McGee looked out too. Had they really stopped rolling? Could it be true? At last things were quiet and peaceful and still. They hooked up the hitch and drove off down the hill. And on the way home, McGee said to Dee, that trip wasn't quite like I thought it would be. So when they got home, with the sky turning red... Oops, I forgot to show you that page. That's where they hitched up and decided to come on home. So when they got home with the sky turning red, they decided to camp in the backyard instead. Now, why do you think that they decided to camp in the backyard? Okay? Now, I want you to think about that along with some other things. When we meet, we're going to discuss and talk about the story, A Camping Spree with Mr. McGee, what our plot was, what happened in the story. But we're going to examine our characters that were in our story and what the setting was for our story, okay? So I hope you enjoyed the story, and when I meet with you guys, we will be discussing that, okay? So think about character and setting, and I will see you soon.